Top 10 beer brands in the world.
1. Pilsner. Pilsner is a type of beer that originally came from the western Bohemian city of Pilsen, Puls. In 1842, it was first brewed, attempting to make it one of the eldest craft beers in the advanced brewery to emerge. The style arose when miserable with the beer's efficiency. The residents of Pilsen planned to create the beer Ge Brauerei, Citizens Brewery, which would afterward become Pilsner Urquell. They finally brought in Joseph Groll, a Bavarian brewmaster, who moved to produce the very first Pilsner beer. While the original concept was to produce a lager in the Bavarian aesthetic, the use of Czech additives greatly affected the creation of a new aesthetic. The initial Pilsner was created with gentle malted barley from Moravia and Saaz hops and was among the first variant of a clear, light bud beer. The form, with individual values, was quickly emulated around the world. Today, the form is split into two major provincial subgroups by the formal categorizations, Bohemian and German Pilsner. The finest Pilsner instances will be crispy and refreshing, with a powerful hoppy flavor, despite slight cultural differences and innumerable impersonations worldwide.
2. Pale Ale. Although the title Pale Ale originally came from England in the 18th century, it was being used primarily for craft beers manufactured of pale unmalted barley that was significantly lighter compared to the standard dark and brown beers. The title is most often used interchangeably in the literature resentful, to complicate matters, and the distinction between these two colors is rather ambiguous to this day. The aesthetic development in distinct angles over the coming decades is primarily driven by multiple beer processes and the hop selection, offering a vibrant form with a wide variety of properties, strengths, and flavors. The majority of models, however, are malty, hop-forward, and vary from gold to brown.
3. Stouts. Stouts are top fermented beers that are darkly colored and have distinctly smoked varieties. Their emergence is intimately associated with British porter, a form established in London sometime during the 18th century. Although this difference is no longer functional, stout developed from building a better and tougher porter. There will be traditional stout aromas of roasted barley and malt that imitate chocolate, coffee, or cocoa. Standard dried stocks range from dark to dark brown and are typically smooth, silky, and creamy in the flesh, medium light to medium full. Traditionally, they have low hop quality and a lengthy rich flavor. The stout classification is now very flexible, but the popular lager stout, which is considered the form's model, is perhaps the most influential representation. This segment now includes numerous added ingredients and types, such as oatmeal, English, sweet, imperial, international extra, and United States stocks. Several other substyles are probably to have a stronger hop effect. The difference between draft and bottle stouts is also created, and usually, the prior will be crunchier and have a much more permanent head. Stouts are also a great experience for crispy, salty, and spice foods, as well as delicious and pleasant desserts, significant variation and discrepancies in appearance. They often fit well with mountain cheeses that are blue-veined and dried.
4. Brown Ale. Brown ale is an ancient and popular type of beer whose roots lie in the British manufacturing heritage. The word was used as a common term in the 19th century for various varieties of beers that were made from dark malt. The brown ale genre almost faded out with the advent of pale malt, and it's only resurrected gradually in the 1920s. Newcastle Brown was the first version to bear the brown ale brand, although it did not depend on the console models. The advanced style was based on it. Today, the style combines the more conventional UK version and American brown ales that are completely different. This beer can vary from dark copper to brown color or caramel. They appear to get a prominent malt taste, biscuits, caramel, and toffee flavors, as well as a slight hop aspect, although they seem to be hoppier in American variants. Brown ales are usually mild to light in the body, and match well with mature cheddar combinations, roasted pork, sausages, and sauces based on peanuts. 5. India Pale Ale. India Pale Ale is among the most interesting types of beer whose origins are still fiercely debated. Still, it is assumed that it first seemed essential to distribute pale ale breweries to separate British colonies, especially India, because the weather was too warm to make beer in the colonial possessions. By raising alcohol content and including more grains, which would help conserve the beer on long journeys, it is proposed that IPA, India Pale Ale, was developed. Whereas the first allusion to the Indian Pale Ale title usually refers to the 1830s, the aesthetic is believed to have shown up far sooner. The production version is thought to have been produced by a Hodgson Brewing Company in the 1780s. Whenever the beers arrived at their destination, they achieved a different, invigorating identity by introducing more hops and unexpectedly fading over time. In hot and humid environments, Indian pale ales became popular because they were soft and crispy. Beer procedures transitioned to lagers by the end of the 19th century, and the Indian pale ale slowly lost its fortress. It was not until the 1980s that it was reinstated by American microbrews, accomplishing remarkable performance and making IPA one of today's top favorites. Not amazingly, in England, where it was originally conceived, also brought India Pale Ale. Some instances today will get a predominant hop type, although English variants will have floral and spicy complexities. American IPA tends to suggest a completely different identity that involves tropical fruit and pine. 6. Helles. Helles is a craft beer in the German tradition that first originated in 1894 in Munich. It was the Bavarian reply to the Czech mild Pilsner beer. While Bavaria leaned entirely on powerful and dark lagers, it inspired Bavarian producers to begin brewing a consistent theme by the trend of crisp and golden Pilsner styles. Classic Helles is usually very malt-forward and has a stiffer body, nonetheless maintains soft and intermediate than Pilsner and other lager types. It is clear, incredibly simple, smooth, young, and dry, including light hop stiffness and mild malt sweetness. Generally, Helles-style beers are very enjoyable and differ slightly from 4.8% to 5.2% ABV, although those over 5% are also known as Bavarian exports. Like salads and fish, light recipes will fit well enough with Helles lagers, but they can also fit with spicy and texture dishes, and typical German cuisine and moderate cheese kinds. 7. Weissbier. Weizenbier. Top 10 beer brands in the world. Weissbier is a traditional Bavarian grain ale that's also highest, and described by its marrying foam and snowy texture, resulting from the significant proportion of wheat used in its manufacturing, and a little barley percentage malt. German rules stipulate that at least 50% must produce malted wheat. However, most variations use more than the reasonable level. These beers are pasteurized with wild yeast that provides bananas, cloves, smoke, and infrequently even chewing gum for their traditional notations. Weissbiers are usually malty and subtly miserable, yet this procedure has become unusual even since they are customarily pasteurized in the bottle. They preserve their smoothness, creamy consistency, and exuberance. Nonetheless, although this form of beer is often linked with Bavaria today, wheat beers have been manufactured until ancient times. At the same time, it is assumed that their European existence is in Czech Bohemia. From where it stretched to Bavaria, it attracted millions of users all across the decades. Still, it regained its past glory after the 1960s and became one of Germany's greatest, coveted after genres and the international level. These nutrition beers, along with flavorful and creamy cheeses, are an incredible match for chicken, sausage rolls, seafood, gentle cuisine, and sandwiches. 8. Dubbel. Top 10 beer brands in the world. A smooth and well-balanced Trappist beer originated in Belgium. Dubbel is often associated with the modern version of Henrik Verlinden, who created the prototype at the Westmalle Brewery in 1926. This version was named Dubbel Bruin, and copied the style in many Belgian breweries soon after its invention. Classic Belgian Dubbel will have its taste from candy sugar, a dense and gloomy crunchy syrup that is incorporated into the brine. Unlike other colored beers, traditionally, these beers originate from amber to copper, and they are generally emblematic of raisins, malt, toffee, and dark fruit with intricate citrus notes. Frequently, their coating is clean, even though it can exhibit malty taste. Most are predisposed in the flask, pasteurized in the bottle, and are not probably perfectly understandable. However, they are traditionally quite impactful. The alcohol is not apparent or distinguishable on the aroma with at least 6.5% alcoholic beverage. Dubbel beer is a great complement to the kinds of a wipe down, or alpine cheese, and they also complement barbecued, dark chocolate, or roasted beef, rich curries of meat, and sausage rolls well. 9. Dunkel. Top 10 beer brands in the world. Dunkel is a gloomy lager from Germany, most of which is correlated with Bavaria and Munich. This dark beer is largely composed of Munich malt, which might vary from copper to brown color, giving the drink its classic cinnamon and buttery identity. Soft, moderate, convenient, overly sweet, and not too dense will typically be the beers that fit into this category. Traditional toasty flavors may be followed by scents of caramel, hazelnut, and nut, whereas the aspect of hop may well be evident but should appear minimal. With traditional Bavarian recipes such as fruit-based sauces, sausage rolls, and grilled or deep-fried beef, the Dunkel beers blend extremely well. Dunkel, or Dunkels, is a term used for a variety of darker German lager beer forms. The German term describing dark is Dunkel, and Dunkel beers vary slightly from brown to deep red-brown in appearance. Their sleek malty flavor distinguish them. Dunkel is usually an indication whatever lager the pub has on board, or markets much of it in unofficial terminology, including when purchasing at a pub. It may be Altbier across much of western and northern Germany, particularly near DSS, ELDO or F. Dunkel is a classic form, together with Helles, fermented in Munich and famous in Bavaria. Dunkels are lighter than Doppelbocks, other typical dark Bavarian beer, with alcoholic percentages of 4.5% to 6% via size. Munich malt flavors are used to make Dunkels, which grants the Dunkel its color. There may even be certain malts or flavors included. There is a unique malty taste in several Dunkels that emerges from a unique manufacturing method called decoction mashing. Dunkel beer is usually dark craft beers, but darker wheat beers like Franziskaner Hefeweiss Dunkel are often referred to in the description. Some other word used to apply to dark wheat beers is Dunkel Weizen, which is fizzy and pleasant with much more roasted and ground malts than the Hefeweizen, which is lighter equivalent. 10. Guinness Draught. Top 10 beer brands in the world. Guinness Draught is a traditional dense Irish stout crafted from buckwheat flour and malted grain barley fried. Guinness maintains one of several glob's most exported beers till this day. Arthur Guinness, who established the brewing company in 1759, begins the tale of its development. Lager beer was all the style, but Arthur started to experiment with a dark beer classified as a stout, which became increasingly successful in England. Guinness needed to rely largely on external instead of other craft beers, trying to send its strong black beer all over the global economy. Arthur transferred his corporation to his son, Arthur Guinness II, who established Ireland's biggest production facility. When Arthur Guinness decided to sign his 9,000-year contract, Guinness Draught was produced in 1959 as a celebratory beverage to commemorate the moment. The beer was an immediate sensation, commended for its wealthy and powerful, creamy, silky texture and variability. It incorporates acidic hops, malt bitterness, and bittering hops tastes, whereas coffee and malt are the typical aromas. Caramel desserts, or chocolate traditional British and Irish foods, beef, shrimp, and fish are best mixed.